This is a video talking about arrivals and departures. Start with departures. Copenhagen has 10 different SIDs. They're RNAV and they're connected to many different directions. They all have a few common restrictions though, such as initial climb to flight level 70 from all the runways, 4000 if they go from 1230. Remember, transition altitude is 5000 by the way. Speed is 250 below flight level 70 and so on. Starting from the bottom, you also need to know restrictions for each of the SIDs. Of the 10 SIDs, they go as follows. Odin for the general direct westbound traffic to Scottish destinations like Billund, Manchester, Scotland, other certain United States destinations. Golga, normally used for airplanes going towards the North Atlantic Sea, which is meaning Aalborg, Western Norway, Faroe Islands, and also up towards the US, as well as Kristiansand and Oslo Torp. Not Gardermoen. You see Gardermoen on a Golga, this is wrong. Because you have Vidar, that's where Gardermoen goes, as well as Gothenburg and other routes which is going up the Swedish coast. An airplane with a Vidar departure is not allowed to re-enter Danish airspace. They must have a route that remains with Sweden control all the way up until Polaris. KMAX for Arlanda and Helsinki normally, and some other destinations up north and east. It's for planes to Sweden and continuing onwards, so more Sweden. CMEC, which is for Bornholm, Baltic countries, Poland, stuff like this. CMEC departures shall go from Sweden to Poland or the Baltic countries. CMEC departures should not go to Germany, and they should absolutely not have Salo as a waypoint later on in the flight plan. This is because Salo. If they have filed a CMEC and have Salo in the flight plan, they need to be refiled to Salo. Salo is the designated SID for airplanes going via Sweden down to Germany. Next is Lango Nexen Covex. This is for airplanes going to the ACC Copenhagen sector and down to the southwest. Difference is basically whether they go east or west of Hamburg. Important to this restriction is that Lango and Nexen are for jet airplanes only. If it's a prop airplane, it will need to be replanned via Copex or somewhere else, and this is for either SID. The last one is Betut. Don't use it. In real life, it's used for airplanes not allowed to fly through Sweden, which doesn't really exist on VATSIM, so don't use it. When assigning an SID, make sure you check the cleared flag and set the initial cleared flight level. The SIDs gets interesting when you have to send them off. SIDs should normally diverge more than 45 degrees. There are SIDs in the same direction, and they will need to be extra separated if they diverge less than 45 degrees. So out of the SIDs, you basically have 1 to the west, 2 to the north, 1 to the northeast, 2 to the southeast, and 4 to the southwest. If 2 airplanes are going in the same direction, they must be separated with 2 minutes. If not, 1 minute is enough. However, here is something important. You are probably not interested in sitting counting seconds all the time, especially when it's busy, so here is a fantastic thumb rule from the real world. Airplane 1 gets takeoff. Airplane 2 lines up. As Airplane 1 passes the opposite end of the threshold, you can begin giving Airplane 2 his takeoff clearance. This will roughly equal to 1 minute. Now if we take 2 minutes, if you have an airplane that gets takeoff, Airplane 2 lines up. Now zoom out on your scope. As Airplane 1 passes 2 miles from the runway, which coincidentally is an RNAV point on the runways, you see it here from Robert, from 2 to right, then you can give Airplane 2 his takeoff clearance. This will roughly equal to 2 minutes. And you know what? It works for 04 as well, since there's an RNAV point there 2 miles out of the runway. An extra mile of separation is also required on a very specific case when 2 KMAX departures are after each other on runway 04 right. This is just because there's simply no way for the controller to really separate them any further because it's just a straight line. So either plan plenty of space between 2 KMAX departures or put an aircraft or 2 in between. It's just good controller management. In a busy environment, airplanes are actually kind of pre-separated before they even reach the runway by the 1230 tower, but this is more in the taxi route lessons. Be aware, also, if you're sending an airplane with different performance classes after each other, you need to maybe also do a different separation. If you send a 747 after an ATR, you will have trouble. Remember, you can always cancel an SID, give a vector, if needed, and makes sense, and of course pre-coordinated with approach. Speaking of approach, you need to tell the airplane after departure, contact whatever frequency he needs to contact. Because even though it's actually standing on the SIDs and it's pretty easy to read, pilots just still really don't know. And also there's a lot of different frequencies. It can be approach, it can be departure, it can be control, it can be everything. Normally you will just have one frequency, so all departures goes to the same frequency. However, you can also have split sectors, split approach and split departures. So if you have that, you need to know which SID goes to the different departure frequency. You can check the point 80166, which very specifically tells you about handover of departures, and it's actually pretty logical. When it comes to landing, it's a bit simpler. Airplanes normally come with a nice 4 to 5 mile separation, which is more than enough. Airplane can go as far down as 2 miles before they need to go around. And conveniently, you actually get a warning. Looks like this, it's yellow and it states conflict. If one airplane is already on the runway, it's fine. Remember, if both airplanes are still in the air, then a go around must be made to one of the airplanes. And please remember, this does not count for VFR, this is IFR separation. Please don't confuse those things. And if you are confused, revisit this lovely table that states that there's no separation between IFR and VFR. Thanks. Another thing about these 2 miles, as stated before, it's when both airplanes are airborne, and then it's a go around. If one of them has landed, he just needs to vacate the runway before the next airplane reaches the threshold, and then you can tell him to continue the approach. Once you get the red sticker of conflict, which is 1 mile, then you really seriously have to think about a go around. Unless it is perfectly clear to you that the preceding is either kind of on his way off the airport or on his way off the runway. Take this example. It's pretty clear here there will be no conflict. The first guy's kind of on his way off the runway already. While if we take this situation, this is a little more tight and you don't really know, so the right choice here is to send someone around. The trailing one, of course. If you decide to send someone around, then you have a missed approach, and the procedures for this are actually pretty simple and imperative to know by heart. So, with the exception of the 2 main landing runways, all the approaches are runway track to 3000, pretty simple. Of course, you normally don't use these runways, you use the main runways 04 left and 22 left, and they have a turn to the left. 04 left approximately to the north, and 22 left approximately to the south. This is to avoid conflicts with the departures that are taking off on the parallel runways. Also note that 22 left has this small extra feature, which is that he needs to climb straight ahead to 500 or half a mile from the ILS, and then do the turn. This is to avoid airplanes turning right into the control tower on their missed approach, and it kind of makes sense. As airplanes are approaching, you will get their tag, and they will maybe have a pre-assigned stand, and maybe they have a different sort of warning flags. However, this is something for another technical lesson later on, so that concludes it for departures and arrivals.